going to resume our budget hearing, and we're going to begin with the departmental budgets for the Law and Justice Department, starting with the courts. Good afternoon, Mr. Blair. Thank you for being here.
Is my mic on? Okay.
Now you
are. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Gary Blair. I'm the Executive Officer for the Superior Court. I manage a county budget that's court-related. The bulk of our court budget itself is funded by the state. So I want to talk about what our county programs are that are still funded by Santa Barbara County. Our total operating budget is actually $15.8 million. That's a little bit of a deceptive figure because about $10.5 million of that 15.8 is simply a payment that the county makes to the state that's to support the state trial court funding. So our real programs that are funded and operating here locally through this budget is a little over $5 million, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. They include the programs like the Conflict Defense Services, the Collections Program, ROR pretrial services units, and grand jury, etc. Could I have the second slide, please? So it shows the total county budget, and the next three lines show how the $10.5 million is comprised. That goes up to the state. It's actually made in quarterly payments. The first line, the $6.7 million, is a general fund contribution that the county makes. The second line is $3.1 million in fine and fee revenues that comprise a subcomponent of that $10.5 million. And then there's another $650,000, which is derived from the amount of money that we collect above and beyond our maintenance of effort level on the fines and fees. So we actually collect about $4.5 million, and to the extent that it's greater than the 3.1, 3.2, the county gets to keep half of that, and the other half goes to the state. So you're actually making a little bit of a profit there. So once again, the actual cost of our county programs that we run is $5.29 million. Next slide, please. Some of the accomplishments over the course of fiscal year 11-12, we collected $9 million in delinquent fees and fines through our collections program. These are distributed in a number of different directions by statute. They go to the state, to the county, and sometimes to cities within the county, depending upon where an arrest might be made. So if it's the sheriff's arrest, distributions would go to the state and the county. If it's a city of Santa Barbara Police Department, the split would be between the state and the city, etc. As of January of 2012, we agreed to assume responsibility for collection of all the public defender court-ordered debt, which increases collections for the public defender. We actually increased it by about 40% by referring it through our collections program. So for the we're projecting for the first 6 months of this that we'll collect approximately $100,000 versus about $60,000 that was collected previously, because the public defender doesn't really have the resources to put all the efforts into the collections. If you annualize that, we would collect about $200,000 versus about $120,000. So between $75,000 and $80,000 more per year as a result of running it through our collections program. We continued a cost recovery process through which the county receives a reimbursement revenue of about $1.2 million. That's our indirect cost of 22% overhead, which is allowed and included within the overall amount that we collect for the county. In the area of the conflict defense contracts, we got the providers, and it should say for both South and North County courts, to agree to a freeze in their index for 09, 010 through 011, 012. So for 3 years we've had it frozen at 0%. We're trying to go back and renegotiate that and keep it at 0% because of the economic times that we're in. And then we recruit a civil grand jury to review all of the government operations throughout Santa Barbara County. And it's not just the county of Santa Barbara itself, but they can look at cities. They can look at special districts. I'm sure all of you have read, many of the reports, and I think the grand jury does an excellent job. There are no service level impacts for court special services in the upcoming year. Every one of our programs is actually mandated by law or by constitution, so there's no impacts there. Could I have the next slide? In preparing for the future, we're not sure what to anticipate for 013-014. So because of the uncertain economic times, there's been indicators that the economy is improving very slowly. Unfortunately, I emphasize the word slowly, and hasn't had a major beneficial impact on us yet. One of the things that Chandra Waller asked me to talk about was what are the results of some of the state budget cuts to our court funding budget. This will probably be the worst year in 012-013 since the advent of state funding of trial courts began back in 1996 to 97. Our cuts will at a minimum be at least $5.6 million. $5.6 million. A portion of that we may be able to offset by using some of our reserves that we've diligently built up over the last several years through a number of cost savings measures. I have almost 40 staff or 40 positions that are vacant. We've operated a very austere budget and tried to maximize revenues. We've instituted a program, for example, that on lesser cases of infractions and some misdemeanors where there's not a mandatory appearance, that we use a civil assessment. If someone fails to appear in court or fails to pay a fine, rather than issuing a bench warrant that probably will never get served, we assess them a $300 civil assessment, and we're able to collect on a lot of those because they're traffic infractions, and we have the power to suspend a person's driver's license if they don't comply. So if you go to renew your license and you have an unpaid court fine or a non-appearance, you won't get your license, and that's a pretty big motivator. To put this in perspective, though, in terms of our state budget, between fiscal years, the 5-year trend between fiscal year 06-07 and fiscal year 011-012, the reduction in state funding has been minus 23%. Pretty significant decrease in funding. The only way that we've been able to survive is by trying to increase our revenues. And some of those revenues, there's a point at which you just cannot go too far in the legislature in terms of increasing civil filing fees or criminal fines because people don't have the ability to pay. So it's, I would say it's a law of diminishing returns. But for 012-013, the situation will continue to significantly decline. The message that we're being told by Sacramento is that all of the reserves that we've diligently built up are going to be captured and taken by the state. So there's no reward for saving money. It's the opposite of what should be good government. The message that's being sent is if you don't spend every penny that you have, you're going to lose it. And I don't think that's a good message to send. So I guess I'll take questions, but in the words of Yogi Berra, the future isn't what it used to be.
Thank you for your presentation. Supervisor Gray.
Thank you. Mr. Blair, I have two questions. The question number one is, I'd like to understand your collection department. How many people, what do you do, and what percentage do you not collect? And I'm speaking, so that's question one. And then question two is, with the state budget cuts and the 23% decrease in funding, what can the public expect to see? What will be the impacts? Like you have to wait longer for trial, or you don't get to the, just give us, kind of an overview of what will happen.
Let me take your second question first. I think the public can expect to see diminished services. We've already had to respond to some of these cuts over the past several years by unfortunately closing our offices to the public at 3 o'clock every day. If you have a filing, a civil filing, for example, that you want to make that day, and it's after 3 o'clock, we have drop boxes in the hallways, and if you get it in the drop box before 5, our promise is that we will still file stamp it that same day. But we're talking about such wholesale cuts that other courts I've spoken to are talking about it amounting to the entire size of their civil and their traffic departments. That's how huge these cuts are. To the extent that we are allowed to use the existing reserves that we have to offset the cuts for 012, 013, they may not be as draconian as they appear to be. But those are only one-time monies that we built up for a multi-year period. So for 013, 014, unless something else is done to restore these horrible funding cuts that the state's imposing on us, I just see very little public access to the courts, reduced civil trial time. I think the criminal trials and juvenile obviously take the highest priorities, and that's probably the bulk of what we're going to be spending our time on, because there's no ability to sustain the level of service that we now have unless some of these cuts are restored for 013, 014. The global cut to the state trial court funding system is about $654 million. Our minimum portion of that, if we're allowed to use every penny of our reserves, is about $5.6 million, but there are many courts out there that have not managed their budgets as well as we have tried to do over the last 5 years. And so you'll have courts, for example, in San Joaquin that have no reserves, or other courts that have very small levels of reserves. And the question will be what the Judicial Council decides to do in terms of allocating those reserves globally amongst the courts. In other words, will they take a disproportionate share of Santa Barbara's reserve and use it to pay for the courts that have not built up reserves? We just don't know that answer yet. Okay, so on the collections question, we have 6 full-time collection representatives, and our collections rate is approximately 43%. So we do have an aggressive program, though, that if someone goes delinquent for more than, 90 days? 90 days, then we have a contract with a collections agency which has all the resources to go after them. And we also impose, I put that in perspective, that 43%, the statewide benchmark is 38%, so we're 5% above the benchmark. But we do add, the civil assessments, and to the extent that it's more of a minor type offense, and we can suspend someone's driver's license, we use that tool. It's a very effective tool.
Just one follow-up. Is the civil assessment that you just mentioned, is that new? I don't remember.
I think we instituted that program about 3 years ago.
3 years ago? Okay.
That's under Penal Code 1214.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Blair? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, we will go ahead and move ahead then and hear from our district attorney. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. May I wait until my others are seated?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, good afternoon. So our 12-13 budget shows an overall decrease of approximately $300,000 from our adopted 11-12 budget. That's important to know. The general fund contribution totals 64%. So examples of where the rest of that money comes from. In terms of 172 funds, that's about 19%. Then we have grants, AB 109, consumer penalties, and fees. Our FTE count is 118.9, and that's down significantly from 138.1. And the reason we are still able to be effective and efficient is we now have volunteers in every department of the district attorney's office countywide. This year we had close to 50 volunteers. That's individual volunteers countywide in every capacity from support staff to attorneys. Thank you. All right, now in terms of our accomplishments, well, first of all, we filed 14,274 cases, and we went to trial on 102 of those. In addition, our investigators have really stepped up this year because we needed them to. They took on the kinds of cases that are important to this community. We are now the primary investigators in the internet crimes against children. We sent one of our investigators to a special school, and now we're working very diligently on that, and we have made some arrests, and we have additional arrests pending, and those are those stalkers on the internet. The other thing we did in terms of stopping gang violence is I've asked our investigators to look into any attempt to purchase a firearm on the part of a felon. And we were actually successful in investigating one of those and prosecuting a felon. So in order to avoid additional gun violence in our county, we're now making sure the right people, or the wrong people, are the ones who are stopped from getting guns. We've also reestablished the Elder Death Review Committee. And we did this not just to look into the cause of some of the elder deaths, but also to make sure all of our agencies are working together in investigating these difficult crimes or potential crimes. And our volunteer attorneys, as all of you know, a program that we're very proud of, it's a mixed bag because we graduated 5 of those people. We told you it was a 6-month program. Proud to say all 5 in this very difficult economic world have found jobs as attorneys, either working for county council or district attorney's office across the state. We're working on replenishing our group. We did just extend for the first time to North County, which is great. I had the pleasure last week of swearing in 2 vibrant young attorneys as volunteers in our North County District Attorney Office. Also, our interns are, we get requests beginning September of people that want to intern. That's people who are presently in law school and want to intern at our office. This year we were full by January, people who wanted to come to the office. So although we accepted 15 from approximately 10 different law schools across the country, we turned away at least that many. And in terms of AB 109, that's put additional demands on the district attorney's office, but the hope is to reduce incarceration and improve the outcome of those under AB 109. Okay, in terms of 1112, very proud of our sexual assault response team. That was created over 25 years ago, and now our office is managing that program. We work with 20 participating agencies. We help victims move from that terrible place of being crime victims to survivors. We try to do it promptly, sensitively, and ethically, and we do that by investigating sexual assault crimes using the most sophisticated forensic procedures. This year, in addition to what we've been doing every year, we were asked by the California District Attorneys Association to actually do a presentation to the other district attorney's office across the state about how it's done well. My team went up there along with someone from the Lompoc Police Department, and we were very warmly received. In terms of community presentations, as you know, this district attorney's office is very interested in preventing crime. We love getting out there, so we put in over 500 hours, and that's people spending time, nights, weekends, sometimes during work hours, making presentations. This year to superintendents multiple times, school board, paralegals, schools, service clubs, pretty much anywhere we're invited. And then we've had 11 grants, and that's brought in $1.5 million in revenue. Thank you. I indicated that it's a decrease. We're going to live with that decrease, so there'll be no service level impacts. Now, that one-time $411,534 budget, that's to maintain existing service levels. And the carryover, and I know all of you are very aware of that, these are savings that are achieved in this fiscal year by our employees' concessions and on the part of our office in terms of stringent controlling costs. We've been proactive in terms of generating additional funds and creating efficiencies in order to save money. Our staff is working extremely hard all the time, and they're doing a great job. And we're going to continue to do everything I just described. Now, 1314, what we really have at this point, and I heard some new numbers this morning, but as we were going into budget presentations, we were talking about a $1.1 million in expenditures, primarily salaries, benefits, pensions. We project out of that 1.1 million, actually $88,273 in a budget shortfall. And again, that difference is on the back of our employees, primarily based upon the employee concessions in 11-12. And we're looking ahead to continue to mitigate those costs. We've been working and hope to get going this year our misdemeanor diversion program. And we think that's not only going to save money at the district attorney's office, but the public defenders and the courts as well. We're seeking additional grants all the time, and we're looking to take savings from 12-13 to continue to save and move that into 13-14. Questions?
Yes, Supervisor Carbajal.
You caught me with candy in my mouth. First of all, I appreciate your presentation, District Attorney Dudley. I noticed that your presentation didn't touch on, so that's why I'm bringing it up, and I think Supervisor Lavanino will be touching on this as well. This does not include the program that we've been working on, the truancy program.
That's correct.
So I asked Mr. Bazanich to have a slide ready so that we could look at what that program would mean in terms
Wonderful.
of additional revenues. And I just want to make sure that at this point, we introduce that as something that I don't want to speak for Supervisor Lavanino, but I think we'll be looking for discussion at the end of our deliberations as to how we could go about funding that, assuming there's support on this board. So there's a slide that Mr. Bazanich has put together outlining the budget for the program, and I just wanted to make sure it got introduced because it wasn't part of your overall budget. It would be an expansion. Mr.
I think Supervisor Carbajal hit it on, hit all the points. This is something I know I just received the grand jury final assessment there, and this is one of their recommendations that we fund this. So I just appreciate all your leadership on this. I also just recently took a tour of the North County DA's offices, and I can attest to the fact that they're all doing extremely hard work under adverse conditions, especially related to the size of their offices. And I just want to give you a big pat on the back for the volunteer program. I mean, without that, I'm not really sure where we'd be. I went into some of these offices that these very young attorneys are in that are doing very, very important work that would be costing us quite a bit of money if they weren't there. So I think that's great. One of the questions I had about that, though, is although I love the program, is there a possibility for liability at all with, I'm sure there's oversight involved, but are we putting ourselves in a situation where we have students or recent graduates doing work that might go to somebody that was more seasoned?
First of all, Supervisor Lavanino, thank you so much for your comments about our office. I very much appreciate it, and I have to tell you that my office was thrilled when you came to tour it last week, so thank you for that. In terms of your question, it's a difficult question. First of all, in terms of liability, there are two things that I have to look at. One is the issue of, are we having these people do work, or are we training them? That's why we're very careful to make sure that our program is in fact a training program and that they are always being supervised by an attorney. We're very concerned about that issue, both for the liability in terms of the work issue and the liability in terms of the county wants to make sure that their prosecutors are prosecuting the cases. It is always true, in my experience, when you have a less experienced attorney prosecuting a case, they're going to have less information than a more experienced attorney. So I would love to have all of my attorneys have lots of experience. What we try to do is we continuously have a mentoring and a supervising program throughout the district attorney's office. So our seniors supervise our less experienced attorneys, and our attorneys supervise our externs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then as far as the truancy portion of this, I guess I'm going to look to our CEO. Is this something that would come back to us on Friday as far as where we make our recommendations?
Chairwoman, Supervisor, yes, I would think this could be part of your budget deliberations that begin either Wednesday afternoon or Friday morning.
Thank you. Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, DA Dudley, for being here, and your staff and all those folks who are probably watching us on TV.
Thank you.
I also appreciate all of the work that your office does. And, the issue of truancy came before the board. I believe it was a unanimous decision to move forward with that until we had our budget hearings.
Right.
And I think it was last week or the week before, I'd asked that you come to my office because I wanted to talk to you about the funding for this position. And because I've been concerned over the years with a decrease in attorneys who are in your office, who are serving and doing the work in major crimes.
Right.
And so my question to you is this $170,000 best spent in truancy, or would it be best spent providing you with an attorney that you would have that opportunity to decide within your office where that should be best spent? So if you can just,
Sure.
because I truly do value your opinion, and I thought we had a really good conversation, but I just want to kind of get it on the record because it is a concern of mine that that the money that is provided is the best bang for our buck. And I think what you said is that it will be.
Thank you. Chair Farr, Supervisor Wilf, thank you again for your kind words about our department. And that is a complicated question. You used the term best 3 times. And in my mind, each time you used it, I had to define what best meant for the county of Santa Barbara. So I'd like to answer that question in 2 parts. As your district attorney, I have a mandated charge. It's in your D pages. The mandatory duty of the district attorney is to diligently and vigilantly pursue those who are believed to have violated the criminal codes of the state of California. So that's my job, and I understand that's my mandated duty. Now, to answer the second part of that, what's best for the county of Santa Barbara? And I can tell you that spending $170,000, it's a matter of investing a little to get a lot. I believe in the truancy program. I believe if we keep kids in school, we're going to have less crime in Santa Barbara County.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me ask you another question then. So you're not asking for any additional funds
I'm not.
in your department. And I'm certainly not here throwing out money.
Darn.
I know. But I am, as I said before, it's a concern of mine about the staffing of your department because you had so many retirements at once. If we were to fund another attorney just fund another attorney. I don't want to tell you where to spend the money. How much would that be?
It would be about, well, you can look at the numbers there. Deputy district attorney is $120,000. But if you're asking me as the department head and as the district attorney, is that how I'd spend it? The answer is at this point, we need investigators and support staff. Because what's happened is I brought in all these volunteers, attorneys, but the support staff and the investigations stayed the same, so we're generating more work from the attorney perspective. So I'd probably spend it on those 2 areas.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. I think it's good to have this conversation because intuitively I thought something else. So I appreciate your comments. So give me, so you feel like you need another investigator?
Mm-hmm. That would be great.
And what would the cost be for that?
I don't know the answer to that.
So these are support staff for your attorneys?
Right. I'm
Okay.
turning to my...
That's fine. We can actually get that maybe later. You can provide me with that.
Be glad
All
to.
right.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Well, I just want to thank you too for all the wonderful work that you and your staff do day in and day out to keep the people of this county safe. And I just want to particularly highlight a couple of things that that I have particularly appreciated. One was you getting right in there and beginning this externship program, which I think is really bearing so much wonderful fruit and so helpful during these tough economic times. I really particularly appreciate how you have reinstituted the elder abuse investigation and the elder death I think serving on the Adult Aging Network, as Supervisor Carbajal and I do, that's of great concern, growing concern. So I appreciate that. And also how strongly you have advocated for our county in keeping out that sexual predator and taking it all the way to the California State Supreme Court. I think that was just tremendous. So an excellent job all the way around, doing more all the time with much less, and my thanks to you and your staff.
Thank you, Chair Farr.
Supervisor Carbajal.
District Attorney Dudley, you're just extraordinary. I loved your answer to Supervisor Wolf because I think you're able to put it together in terms of the priorities, your charge, and at the end of the day, what's in the best interest of the County of Santa Barbara. And I'm just very grateful for your comprehensive perspective. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you, Supervisor Carbajal.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, and then our last department under this section is the Public Defender. I'll give them a minute here to set up. One of these days you're going to open up the drawer and you're going to find money in there. All right, good afternoon. You ready to begin?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Thorne. I'm here speaking to you on behalf of the Public Defender's Office. The Public Defender's Office helps the county meet its obligation of providing lawyers to its residents whose liberty is at stake, but who cannot afford to hire an attorney. Our office has an operating budget of $9.8 million. 70% of that amount, $6.9 million, is provided by the county from the general fund. The balance comes from a share of state sales tax revenue funds and attorney fees collected through the Superior Court, as Mr. Blair has told you. The Public Defender's Office defends adults and minors charged with criminal offenses, but we do more than that. We defend county residents who are physically disabled or suffer from mental illness or Alzheimer's or dementia. These clients are some of our county's most vulnerable persons. We are 61 full-time employees, less than 2% of the county's workforce. In spite of losing 9 full-time employees last year, which was 12% of our workforce, we continue to do important work for the county. This fiscal year, we've represented clients in over 22,000 matters in the courts. The Superior Court's projected 2011-12 statistics show that countywide there were 14,715 new felony and misdemeanor complaints filed with the Superior Court. By year's end, the Public Defender's Office expects to have represented defendants in 72% of these new felony cases and 59% of the new misdemeanor cases. In addition to these cases, by year's end, we will have represented clients in over 8,000 other matters opened in fiscal year 2011-12, as well as continuing our representation of existing clients. We represent these clients in probation violation hearings, juvenile court proceedings, contempt proceedings, treatment and collaborative court proceedings, and probate and conservatorship proceedings, where we work with a public guardian to advocate for our mentally ill and disabled clients in court and in the facilities where they may be living. We expect our caseload to remain at its present level in 2012-13, though unforeseen events can change this prediction. The work we do has changed in the last several years. Our primary responsibility continues to be representing adults and juveniles charged with criminal offenses, but almost a third of our work now requires us to work and take an active role with partners in the legal system and the community to help our clients return to productive lives. We have represented clients in 13,000 new matters in our treatment courts. We have represented 321 clients in conservatorship and probate proceedings. Our work in this area has increased 26% since this fiscal year 2008-2009. We've also worked with the courts to increase attorney fee assessments and collections. And as Mr. Blair indicated, the amount that has been brought in has almost doubled compared to last year. With the advent of the Public Safety Realignment Act this past October, our relationships with the district attorney, the sheriff, probation, and other agencies has assumed greater importance. We have worked with the probation department and the district attorney's office so that when revocations of post-release community supervision are necessary, they occur as expeditiously as possible without compromising the rights of the supervised offender. And by working to find alternatives to incarceration and by reducing the length of a prisoner's incarceration, the Public Defender's Office finds alternatives to jail, custody, that benefit the offender, do not compromise public safety, and reduce jail bed days, so that space in the jail is available for inmates that may not be suitable for jail alternatives. As realignment unfolds, we will continue working with our justice partners to meet the needs that come with the increased number of persons under community supervision. In spite of reduced resources, we have not turned away any cases. Last year's reduction in support staff has increased the workload of our remaining staff. Our current staffing levels have required us to increase the workload of our legal office professionals by 31% and our investigators by 48%. We have been able to continue representing our clients because we have caring and dedicated attorneys and support personnel who push themselves beyond their limits and exceed expectations to serve our clients. In the first full week of May, for instance, our attorneys appeared in 1,630 matters in 15 different courtrooms to represent clients in 49 different types of proceedings. On some days, however, the unforeseen absence of even a single staff member due to illness or another unforeseen reason can cripple our operation, resulting in a delay in preparing a pleading or being able to present a matter in court. These delays would impact the courts, who would be unable to hear the case, the district attorney and public defender, who will have to make an extra court appearance in the matter, the sheriff, who would have to return a prisoner to the jail, the client, who might have had their case resolved, and the public, who expect the courts to address their concerns as promptly as possible. Finding a way to meet our obligations to the courts and our clients now and in the future without overtaxing our staff is the greatest challenge facing our office. Going into fiscal year 2013-14, we will face fiscal, technological, and workload challenges. In the fiscal arena, the proposed budget for our department includes a projected general fund gap of $260,000. This anticipated deficit, if this anticipated deficit materializes and is of the projected magnitude, we would have to eliminate at least 3 full-time positions to accommodate the proposed budget. Last year, we were required to reduce our support staff. In the future, we'd be required to reduce our attorney staff, and this would impact the number of cases that we'd be able to accept. These potential reductions would occur at a time when our workload would be affected by the public safety realignment. In July 2013, our Superior Court will be responsible for conducting parole violation hearings. The Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation will continue to supervise parolees, but each county will have to use its own resources to conduct violation hearings and house offenders in their jails. It is quite probable that this increased caseload will require additional personnel to appear in court and locate appropriate alternative programs for those offenders who might qualify for an alternative sentence. Finally, we've been able to meet our responsibilities to our clients by redistributing the tasks assigned to our attorney and support staff, making full use of the technology available to our office. But we can no longer completely rely on technology to help us represent our clients. Our case management system has reached its technological and hardware end of life. We're working with the county's IT department to keep our system running while we try to resolve these issues, but the system needs to be replaced. We need to keep our resources as intact as possible. We do important work for the county that has to be done, and we are doing this work economically and efficiently. Thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments from the board? Supervisor Lavanino, then Supervisor Wolf.
Mr. Montes de Oca, I was just curious, after hearing from our district attorney about their volunteer program, if that's something that you have tried to replicate at all, or are people more interested in serving as on the other side of the aisle, or is that something you might look to in the future, Because obviously, looking at these charts, you folks are understaffed and you're under tremendous workload. I'm sure volunteers would come at a great relief to you.
We actually do have volunteers. We've got volunteer attorneys. As a matter of fact, we have, I believe, 3 volunteer attorneys, 2 in the South County office, 1 in the North County office at this time. And we make, full use of these volunteers. We work with them to provide them the guidance that they would need to represent our clients. These are attorneys, and these attorneys have come to us with some experience, so sometimes the supervision is not as intense as if it was just a law clerk or a new attorney. We also have interns, people that are not attorneys or people that have that are currently in law school or have passed the bar and are awaiting results. And if these interns can work as attorneys under one of the rules of the court, we will give them supervision and have them work as attorneys. If not, they'll help us with our cases, appear in court. We treat it as a learning experience for them as much as an opportunity for us to have somebody help us with our work. So we do have programs that address those areas.
Because I'd like to see that maximized as much as we can. We have, I think Mr. Foley was telling me that they had 4 positions at one point, and over 275 people applied for those, and really the only way that you can get hired on is by being a volunteer or an intern in another county, basically, is how to get the foot in the door. So it just seems that with all the people coming out of law school that they'd be kind of knocking down our door to try to get some time in there. But
that's certainly something that we'll try to continue to do and perhaps amplify.
Supervisor Wolf, then Supervisor Carbajal.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make a statement that it seems, based on your presentation, then also hearing from District Attorney Dudley, is that one of the issues that you're also facing is the support staff. Is that accurate?
That is true.
Okay. And then can you just expand upon the software program that you were talking about that you may need to replace?
Well, we have a case management system that is maybe 12 years old now. And what we've tried to do is tried to move some of the work that the support staff was doing to log the cases, to keep track of our cases, to our attorney staff. And we've done this by providing them with either laptops or iPads or other sort of mobile devices. And we've been able to do much. No, I'm not going to say much. For example, the district attorney's office gives us what we call discovery. That is the police reports, evidence, photographs, that sort of thing in electronic form. So we can access these through the mobile devices that our attorneys have. The attorneys are also able to work in court by accessing research materials, etc., over the internet. The one bottleneck is that we can't access our case management system through the internet because you just can't do it. It's not made for that sort of access. The server that this case management system resides on is at the end of its life expectancy. So we're in a position where we'd like to be able to have our attorneys do more work, not just in the office, but out of the office as they're waiting for cases to be called. We can't do that because of the case management system and the limitations it has. And in turn, the case management system is at a point where it's just not going to be useful for us any longer. But with the help of the IT staff, we're trying to expand that life a little bit more so that we can work with the courts, with the other people in the justice system to come to something that can be used to both input information and to access information while in the courtroom.
Okay, so you're working on that?
Yes.
Okay. And then my final question is, at the DAC, we had talked about your progress in moving into your new building, and I think the current lease is up this month.
Yes.
Are you on target to move into the new building at the end of the month?
We sure hope so. We just met with the mover. The mover it's going to be down to the wire. He's going to come in on the 30th, move us out on the 30th. So by the 1st of July, we should be in the new courthouse.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Carbajal.
I'm glad you touched on the move, because I know one of the major issues in the public defender's office over the years was some morale issues, but not so much because of management as it was because of the conditions we had you in at the courthouse. And I'm really glad to hear that you guys are about to go back into your new digs that is very well deserved, and hopefully we'll go towards continuing to improve morale and everybody having good working conditions while they do their work, and hopefully a sign from the board of how much we appreciate all that you guys do for our community. So thank you for your good work, Mr. Montes de Oca.
Thank you, Supervisor.
And including Mr. Jake Stoddard. He's the stealth executive assistant now who's under the radar, but I want to recognize Jake as well. I worked with Jake a long time ago, and I always have known that he's just a great attorney and now a great manager over there in your department as well.
We look forward to returning to the courthouse, and at the first opportunity, we'll invite the board to come and tour the building that we have.
We're looking forward to that.
Madam Chair, there is something that I think is germane both for the district attorney and the public defender. You know, I think there are attorneys who come out of law school, and some of them go right into the area that they're interested in and just start working on their careers. But I'm wondering if we provided a paid internship at the fraction of the cost of what it actually costs a full-time attorney, whether they might say, you know, it's not going to give me the $60,000 entry job that I want, but they're willing to at least give me $30,000 or $25,000 for a year, at least a year, maybe two. It might be a win-win for people to feel they can still make a living, but come in and have a whole year of mentorship and training in an area, whether it's the DA or the public defender, and yet we would get them, other than volunteer. Of course, we want them to volunteer, but sometimes you get what you pay for. You know, volunteer usually comes 2 days a week or whatever it is. But I think if you formalize it, it may actually be a win-win to provide an actual stipend for those new attorneys, especially those that work for newspapers. There's somebody in this room that I'm referring to. So,
I'm glad you brought that up, Supervisor. We have been discussing the possibility of fellowships, and if there were to be a way to have paid fellowships, so that with a relatively small amount that we pay out, we can get somebody to come and work for us for some period of time. Last year, or perhaps, the last fiscal year, we had 2 attorneys working in our office on fellowships that were paid for by the law schools that they went to. So it's something that we're looking into, and I thank you for your encouragement in this.
Supervisor Gray?
Thank you. I think it's only appropriate to say, Mr. Montes de Oca, what an incredibly good job you do, and to salute your leadership. I've been on the board quite a long time now, and so often the public defender's office was confrontational and unhappy, and I think that your value must be astronomical, because this was the smoothest. I mean, you hate to just make a big deal out of something, but I think it's just highly appropriate right now to just say congratulations, and those that work for you must be fortunate indeed.
I thank you. I had nothing to do with it. I think it's I think it's more the people that work, you know, in our offices, their dedication to the clients, and also the realization that we need to work with the district attorney, and Ms. Dudley has been very collaborative with us, and I have to acknowledge that as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Montes de Oca, I also would like to thank you. And I do have a question for you. When you talked about collaboratively working to reduce jail bed days, you know, given all the discussions that the board has had recently to do with the cost of incarceration versus the cost of treatment for people with mental illness that find themselves in the jail or the homeless, whatever, how we're trying to improve the system overall that is not only better for the individuals involved, but also better for the county and more cost effective. In looking at that particular issue in your department, what would you say would be the best use of resources, assuming we had more money to put into this area in the future, from your department's perspective? Is it, the social worker positions that we talked about a year ago, or attorneys or support staff? What would that be?
Something akin to the social worker positions, I believe. We have tried to use some of the AB 109, the $69,000 that we were given for revocations and people that were going to be have their supervision revoked. Some of that to hire somebody as extra help that is working almost as a social worker, a liaison with the jail, trying to find appropriate programs or housing, for individuals. We hopefully will be able to use some money from AB 109. It's only a one-year grant of money, but to use them, to have one position in North County, one position in South County, to do something along the same lines. So the short answer is I think social workers are the best.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Any more comments or questions? Thank you again, and we'll go ahead then and turn to public comment for this particular section to do with law and justice. Mr. Allen?
Mr. Armendariz? Mr. Caldwell?
I think they're looking for money in the drawer, folks. Okay. Let's come back.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm Andy Caldwell representing CoLab. There's a lot of people out there that are hardworking, they pay their taxes, and they never get in trouble. And the one thing they want is when they call 911, they want justice to be done. So, when you go through these next two budget department sections with law and justice and public safety, there's a lot of people that's the one thing they want from you, is to make sure these things are fully funded. And if we are not being able to administer justice, then the question is where are we spending our money and what can we do about it and what can we do differently? This is there's examples abounding through these books where the performance measures don't give you an adequate picture of what's actually going on or not going on. And then, there's also this issue that I brought up before about, for instance, contracting out. As you know, we've done some work in San Luis Obispo, and their public defenders are contract employees. And if you take a look at page D56 for the public defender, and I don't mean to pick on them because I feel they do a good job, but it is what San Luis is doing. You're spending nearly $6 million on salaries and $3.3 million on benefits. If you paid, and there's 61 people in the department, so technically, on average, you're paying $100,000 a year per employee for salaries, and you're paying about a little bit more than half that on benefits. At $100,000 apiece, you could hire another 30 attorneys if you contracted out without giving your contract employees benefits. It's working in San Luis. I was there when they reviewed this issue, and they've had no complaints and no problems. So why aren't we looking at that here? If you could have more than a 50% savings and augment your staff basically double the number of attorneys you have. But we're not talking about that. You know, years ago there used to be a performance measure, and I think it had to do with arraignments, where the North County judges did something different than the South County judges. Do you remember that, Joni? And it was very inefficient what one set of those judges were doing. But we don't review that. Your board doesn't review that. But it affects the public defender's budget and the DA's budget, but you don't review it. You don't even have any data on it anymore. Prop 36, substance treatment courts. Has there been a decline over time in the number of people in the system? What's happened to the crime rates? Lots of times in the statistics, whether it was the anti-smoking program or the probation department, they'll give you statistics to a year. There'll be a statistic like they haven't committed a new felony while on probation. But what's the long-range statistic? Why don't we have those long-range statistics? Are the drug courts working? That's the kind of stuff the public has a right to know, and that you have a duty to know as you go through this exercise. So, you know, when they give percentages but not numbers, when they don't give you the numbers over time, when those numbers are not tied to other demographics or statistics, especially from other departments, you know, there should be an interconnectivity between probation, DA, public defender, and even the social services department. 15 years ago, I asked the board back then, how many people are on some form of welfare, on probation, and waiting for a court hearing? Do we have this problem group of people that we should throw more resources at and maybe solve some long-term problems? These are the kinds of things that year after year after year, we're not doing it. And so we would like a discussion. You either schedule it now or schedule it next week. Find out what SLO's doing in the public defender's office and how it's working and why can't it work here, as one example, so that people who can't afford an attorney are having the attention of one by adding perhaps 30 additional attorneys to the load. Thank you.
Thank you. That was all for public comment for this item. All right, the board is going to take a break. We will come back at, I'm sorry, Supervisor Lavanina?
Because, I'm sorry, thank you. On that, I had thought when we were, and maybe it was last year, going through the budget, but I thought we had addressed this, and I'm addressing this to our CEO, that hadn't we talked about doing some contracting out or in that public defender's office, or am I mistaken, or is it something you see on the horizon of taking a look at?
This is a question for CEO Waller.
Chairwoman, Supervisor, I don't recall specifically the public defender's office, but I do know that was one of the things that we spoke of, was the possibility of privatization. And I believe as we're looking at our strategic plan update, we'll be very interested in getting some board's direction about if that's a priority for us to come back with some items and some possibilities as to those items.
Thank you. Supervisor Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. CEO Waller, maybe it was right before you came, but there was a report that was done by the previous public defender, and maybe I think there was a group that was looking at some of these agencies. So you might want to see if you can dig that up.
Thank you. So, yes, Supervisor Gray.
And I have basically advocated this for years because I've worked in the courts and feel that it's definitely a cost savings, but there's never been support on the part of the board. So I hate to see the CEO's office waste a bunch of time when there may only be a few of us that would support the effort. So I think it's important to find out where the interest lies before you do a lot of work on it.
Thank you, Supervisor Gray. All right, the board's going to take a short break. We'll come back at 2 o'clock, and then we will hear from our 3 public safety departments.